Okay, so this is Maria de Ponte Azkarate, and so this is joint work with Korta, and the talk is ephemeral, episodes, durable content. So thank you, Maria, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Mateus. Thank you, Francois and Marian, for organizing this workshop and the next one. So this should be a fun week ahead. So this is a joint work. I'm going to do the hard job of presenting here, but Korta is in the room for support, I guess. Let me say, in this talk, we're going to present, the aim is to present some basic elements of a framework for, this is effective, yeah. Of a framework to account for issues related to belief dynamics, obviously, because this is a talk. So one way, the way to start is with Frege's quote, which Francois already discussed, and I assume we are going to read this quote this week a couple of times. So anyway, if someone wants to say what is expressed yesterday using the word today, he would replace this word with yesterday, although the thought is the same. The verbal expression must be different. So, oops, I kept changing here. So, I took this from the abstract of this workshop, from the call for paper. So a very normal, common way of understanding or thinking about this quote is like, well, we have two options, roughly, right? The first one would be claiming that indexicality is a property of certain linguistic expressions, or rather of the relation between these expressions and the thought they contribute to express. The second idea would be to claim that indexicals are essential somehow, and this is usually attributed to John Perry. So indexicality is a property of thoughts themselves, and not merely of their linguistic expression. So according to this second option, there are indexical thoughts, right? And of course, the abstract continues. It would still be possible to claim that with Frege that the idea of dynamic thought. So you can say that the thought remains constant through the change of time, through the change of days, right? So that would be the idea of dynamic thoughts as expressed by Evan mostly. So one of the things, the aim of this talk, one of the aims, as I say, is to present this framework. And the framework is very much inspired, or is basically based on John Perry's ideas, John Perry's framework, both inspired by his ideas in the early papers, the 1977-79 Frege demonstratives and the problem of the essential indexical, and on his most recent work. Actually, we're going to be working with his most recent work. But the idea is, okay, maybe while we do that, we could clarify maybe a few common misconceptions. One of those is that Perry's view is actually the first one, not the second one. So the idea would be sentences containing indexicals, or rather utterances that express indexical sentences, according to John Perry in the 70 papers, they do not express Fregean complete thoughts. Rather, what they express are thoughts understood as information, or hybrids with the object and an incomplete thought. That was in 77, or a singular Russellian proposition later on. So he did claim, of course, he claimed that indexicals were raised interest in semantic and epistemic issues, different from those raised by proper names or definite descriptions. And he took the word essential from Héctor Neri Castañeda, who thought that indexicals I and now were essential in the sense that they were irreducible. Like, you could explain the other indexicals with them. But he doesn't use indexical thought. He doesn't think that indexicality is an essential feature of thought. So it's not essential. Indexicality would not be essential in that sense, in the sense that we usually attribute to the second option. Of course, and this is connected with what Francois said just now in answering questions, Perry doesn't reject the existence of dynamic thoughts. But, and I hope this will be made clear during the talk, but these dynamic thoughts will be one among many truth conditions of each belief. So you have a belief with different truth conditions, different levels of truth conditions, and dynamic thoughts will be one among many, right? So I think this idea will become clear during the talk. But there's no rejection of dynamic thoughts, obviously, because, as early as in 1979, one of the key elements, and it's going to be very important here in this talk, is that he did was rejecting what he called the doctrine of propositions. Most importantly, the main idea is he rejected the idea of a belief consisting in a relation between an agent and a proposition. So that is, no matter what kind of proposition you adopt, is it singular, is it general, is it a Fregean thought, a hybrid proposition, it will not do all the jobs it is supposed to do. So it will not represent the object or the subject matter of beliefs and statements, represent the truth conditions, account for communicative exchanges, account for the cognitive motivation, and most importantly for us here, explain belief dynamics. The idea is we're asking too much of one single proposition, so to speak. So initially, in his positive account, what Perry did, sorry, what did I do? Oh yeah, this is good. His positive view consisted first in making the distinction between what is belief and how we believe that. This distinction, actually, he has elaborated that distinction and in more recent works, like in Critical Referentialism from 2000 and then Critical Pragmatics with Korta and recent one, he has elaborated on that, and now we actually have a variety of truth conditions. And also, of course, the notion of self-locating beliefs that we're going to make use of in this talk. So basically, a self-locating belief is a belief expressible by indexical statements about who, when, and where I am. So it would be kind of beliefs that I would express by saying, I am Maria, this is Paris, and this is June 24. Yeah, that's right. 2024. Okay, so that's so these are like the original notions that Frege used. As I say, the framework we're going to use is based on his recent views and also the views that we have defended in recent papers, joint papers with John Perry, Korta, and myself. So I'm going to give just a few basic concepts, and then the idea is we're going to put this framework to test, let's say, with 3 different examples, right? So to see how it works and how we can account for belief dynamics, okay? So the first notion is that of episodes, right? So we think of episodes. Episodes would be something like utterances, beliefs, desires, hopes, right? So these are just events or things that occur in space and time. They have cognitive contents, and they have causes and effects. So we're going to be talking about belief episodes. So a belief episode can be very short, like I believe that I am talking, or I believe that I am sleepy. I'm not, but or a perception of a bolt of lightning. That's a very short episode. Or they can be extended in time, like the fear you develop of lightning, or my belief episode that my name is Maria. This is a belief episode I've had for many years now, and presumably I will have for many more years, until I die or forget my name, whatever happens first. So they can be very long, or they can be very short. Episodes have cognitive contents. At some point, we talk about a cognitive episode. These cognitive contents, they track satisfaction conditions. So in the case of belief episodes, you have truth conditions. In the case of desires, you're going to have satisfaction conditions, and so on and so forth. So these contents, I mean, we could think of these contents in terms of propositions. As long, in our view, as long as we keep propositions, we think of propositions as merely theoretical tools to keep track of truth conditions or of satisfaction conditions. In this talk and in the paper that we're writing, I mean, that is based on that, we're going to avoid talking about propositions. Just to, we think it's a very philosophically charged notion, so we're going to, and also about content, we're going to avoid that and only talk about episodes and truth conditions. And as we're going to say, episodes, it's important to talk about belief episodes because they are going to have different causes and effects and cognitive import, cognitive effects on the agent. But that, I hope, will become clear. Now, the second notion is the idea of notion. The second notion is the second basic concept would be a notion, of course. Notion is a mental file containing information and misinformation about an object. The beliefs vehicles are combinations of notions and ideas. Ideas are information or misinformation about properties and relations. And basically you have two types. Of course, whenever we're talking about notions and the relations between notions, we're going to be talking a lot about that. We kind of defer to the work of Francois, and we think that his work proves that this is a plausible and compelling framework. So we're not going to get into much details, but the idea is we make the difference between what we call, or what John Perry calls, buffers, and these are temporal notions. These are typically, but not always, caused by perception. So if I'm writing at home, there's a typical buffer would be one associated with my keyboard, that I get, or a buffer that I associate now with this room. Another example that I'm going to be using a lot is the buffer of the present moment. Right? So it's something I perceive, and of course this buffer kind of accumulates, and it leads to the buffer of the present day. And another one is detached notions. These are a store of memory. So I have a detached notion of my keyboard back at home. It's in my memory. So this is a big difference. So in John Perry's theory, files are alternative to Fregean senses, to Fregean thoughts. So, but there are some differences in the Fregean framework of theory. Senses determine reference, files do not determine reference. And files can have origin, and this is going to be relevant. You have the objects and the properties that cause their creation, or they can lack these origins. So I can have a notion of my youngest grandchild. Oh, let's just leave it at my grandchild. I do not have grandchildren. But I can have a notion of a grandchild, of my grandchild. It's just, it doesn't have an origin, but still I can think about my grandchild. That doesn't exist. And of course, they can be displaced, they can be merged, they can divide among themselves, and they can be linked. Notions can be linked with buffers, so they can be linked. Basically, for us, they are the building blocks of cognitive dynamics. And I think with the examples, we're going to see how we claim they work. And again, we refer to Recanati's work, mostly on his book, Mental Files, I think, to explain all this dynamic of merging, linking, dividing, updating, converging. Now, then we have what I mentioned at the beginning, the variety of truth conditions. So they have satisfaction conditions or truth conditions of the belief episodes. So the truth condition of belief episodes depend on the notions and ideas involved in the episode and on the origin of these notions and ideas. So we distinguish several levels of truth conditions according to the facts that we take for granted, right? They are sort of incremental truth conditions. So up there we have the referential truth condition. It gets to the subject matter. right? Basically to the content or the subject matter of the belief episode. So here we have facts about the context of the episode and about the notions and ideas involved. Now, if we leave aside, if we don't take for granted the facts about the origins, if any, of our notions and ideas, what we get is the notion-bound truth conditions. We're going to see at least one example to see how it works, but this is when we leave aside facts about origins. So we have the notions, but we don't take as given the origin of these notions. And then we have an array of hybrid truth conditions. These are truth conditions where some facts are given, some others are not. So, we have an array of truth conditions. So, okay, as I say, these are the basic concepts. I think they're going to become a bit more clear when we see them in working, right? So we're going to use 3 examples. I think at least 2 of them are very well known, but in the other one too. So the first one is, a nice day. So let's imagine it's June 30th, and we have Kaplan is going to be our agent here. He's at home, he checks the weather report, and he sees that it's going to be, he comes to believe something that he would express with the sentence, it will be a nice day tomorrow. That's belief episode 1. Belief episode 2 is, it's July the 1st, Kaplan wakes up, open the windows, and he comes to believe something that he would express with, it is a nice day today. And the next day, July the 2nd, Kaplan wakes up and he has a lot of nice memories about the previous day, and he comes to believe something that he would express, or that he could express by uttering, it was a nice day yesterday, okay? Now, we're going to see different options, but the idea is, assuming that these 3 belief episodes take place at the same location, 1, 2, and 3, they have the same referential truth conditions. That is, they have the same subject matter. The 3 of them are belief episodes about July the 1st having the property of being a nice day, right? And we think that the fact that they share this, the same referential truth conditions, you can call this referential truth condition a singular proposition if you wish, right? It's they share the subject matter, is behind the strong intuition we have that, Kaplan is believing the same thing. So there's one single thought that remains constant. We don't think, in our view, it is not a thought that remains constant through, through 1, 2, and 3, through the 3 days. There's no such thought. The idea is, well, they share the same referential truth conditions, and this is why that you can characterize as a singular proposition. So, and this is what is behind that intuition. But it's important to notice that for us, there are 3 different belief episodes. So it's not one belief that Kaplan had for 3 days. There are 3 independent events that happened at different space and locations. And as we're going to see, they have different causes, different cognitive effects, and other types of effects. And their place in the in Kaplan's mental's life is going to be different, right? So, yeah. So it will be a nice day tomorrow. This is a belief episode about the future. It is caused by, by the weather forecaster, whatever he or she said. And this belief episode involves, or it is a prediction about one particular day, July 1st, through via a temporal notion. We're going to call it a buffer-dependent descriptive notion. Without getting into many details, the idea is this notion is partly descriptive, containing being the next day, and partly a buffer, because that picks up the present day. So you pick up the present day, and you have the description the next day. That's tomorrow. And I'm not going to get, I'm going to write, I'm not going to get in the notion truth conditions all the time, but let me read this one so you get an idea. So the notion-bound truth conditions of belief episode 1, it will be a nice day tomorrow. So 1 is true if and only if the day that is the origin of Kaplan's notion, of Kaplan's tomorrow's notion, is nice, where tomorrow's notion is the notion created by Kaplan for his planning for the next day of the episode, right? So these are the notion-bound truth conditions, right? So one would be true if and only if the day that is the origin of the tomorrow notion is the notion created by Kaplan, right? And yeah, exactly. So now, it is a nice day today. What happens here? This is a perceptual belief episode about the present. So it involves a buffer, today notion, a notion that is a buffer, that immediately picks up the day of the belief episode. Now, the notion-bound truth condition is going to be different because the notion involved is different. And also the cognitive impact. So if you have, in the previous one, a belief episode about the future, well, you know, if Kaplan believes something that he would express by, it will be a nice day tomorrow, well, this is going to probably Kaplan, upon believing that, upon having this belief episode, will start making plans for the next day, maybe, you know, planning to go fishing, renting a boat, whatever. On the other hand, upon believing it is a nice day today, well, that would probably make Kaplan happy, and he will go fishing, probably. I mean, you know, it's just something that generates happiness. But now, linking this with cognitive dynamics, there are at least two possibilities here. We're going to say case one and case B. Case one, so we are on July the 1st. You know, we are in the present day, let's say the day where a belief episode of two, it is a nice day today. Suppose that at that day, Kaplan remembers his prediction of the previous day. So the belief episode 2 is a confirmation of sorts of the belief episode 1, right? So this has several effects. His trust in the weather report or in the weather guy who gives the report will increase. And he probably will be happy. I mean, thank goodness, you know, I make plans, I rented the boat, now I can go fishing, you know, that was a good idea. The fact that, you know, he remembers is explained because the today notion and the tomorrow notion are linked in such a way that the former, that today notion, would incorporate the information that it is a day whose weather was rightly predicted the previous day. So that information is incorporated into the notion. Now, because obviously we already said the referential truth conditions are the same, we have two different notions, but these two notions are linked. The identity of the referential truth conditions and notional link, that would allow us to say in this case that it is a case of continued belief. There is no change of mind, even if there are two belief episodes or two notions. There's clearly, I mean, in no intuitive way of understanding change of mind, we would say that there is a change of mind here. But of course, suppose in another case, and we already talked about this, the Kaplan doesn't remember the prediction he made the previous day. He doesn't remember any of the plans he made for whatever reason, right? Still, he wakes up, he sees it's a nice day, he's happy about it, and he thinks about what to do. Maybe he goes fishing, maybe not, we don't know. Obviously, his trust on the weather forecast, it remains equal. I mean, it's irrelevant, obviously. So the case here is there's no link between the today notion and the tomorrow notion. This is why he forgets. This is how we define forgetting something, right? There's no memory. So in this case, we have referential truth conditions of 1 and 2 are the same. Kaplan believes the same thing about the same day. Two different notions, and then these notions are not linked. So for us, in this case, we don't have continued belief, right? But we don't have change of mind either. Because it's not like he's correcting something. It's just the notions are not linked, are disconnected. What we have is disconnection. So we don't have change of mind. The change of mind, as we understand it, is an issue that it's related to these internal states of the agent and the internal links between among the notions. And in this case, they are disconnected. Now, the third belief episode that we could express with "it was a nice day yesterday," this is a belief episode about the past, involving July 1st. Again, we have a buffer-dependent, as we call descriptive notion. So you have a buffer that picks up the present day and a description of being the previous day. You have the notion bound truth conditions, which are pretty similar to the belief episode 1. Again, same reference truth conditions, two different notions, but we have to go into a bit more detail to know whether there is continued belief or not, or change of mind. So again, case A will be one in which Kaplan remembers that the previous day was a nice day. He remembers going fishing, sunny, happy. So in this case, again, the link between the notions, today notion and yesterday notion is made because he does remember. Here again, and again, there was some discussion in the previous talk. What we say is that the change of context, the passing from one day to another, provokes a change in the access, in the epistemic access to that day, right? Epistemic disposition, it was said. So basically, it's up until midnight, Kaplan could perceive July the 1st. From midnight on, he could only remember. He can only remember July the 1st. He cannot perceive July 1st. So there is a clear change in the way we can epistemically access July the 1st. Still, because there is a link, because they have an update between the two notions, it is a case of continued belief, no change of mind involved. And similarly, this is similar to the tomorrow case, although it's a bit different, because so suppose Kaplan doesn't remember anything about the previous day, but still he's at home and he's watching the news and he hears the weather forecaster say it was a nice day yesterday. So don't expect the same for today or something like that, right? So he comes to believe something that he would express, it was a nice day yesterday. Still, this is not, so still this would not be a case of continued belief. He doesn't remember that yesterday it was a nice day. There is no link between his yesterday notion and his today notion. He got some information about yesterday, but this is not his notion of today that gets updated into his today notion, right? So there is no link there. It's like if I don't remember anything about last week and somebody tells me last week something blah blah happened, I get a new notion somehow of that day, but it's not the day that is linked to my notion of today. It's not linked. So in that case, we still think there is no continued belief. Somebody could tell him all the details about the previous day. Still, it would not be a continued belief. And no change of mind, because there is no correction. There's just disconnection, let's say, between the notions. So, provisional conclusion. It seems like to have belief retention or continued belief, it seems like we need the same referential truth conditions, the same subject matter, let's say, and an appropriate link between the notions involved. So this is something, it seems like this is necessary, but it's certainly certainly not sufficient, right? Also, the knowledge of, or attunement to, as John Perry would say, of the origin relations between the notions is going to be very important. This is basically the old self-locating beliefs, the old Perry's self-locating belief, right? And to see why, to see how this works, we're going to use another example, okay? This is a second example. Well, anyway, so far, in our example, what we've had is ephemeral episodes, that is very short episodes with kind of very stable contents. This example is going to be the opposite. We're going to have a kind of a long episode with very short contents. We take this example from John in 1980 in his paper, Problem of Continued Belief, I think it was. He took this paper, this example from Pendlebury, I think it is pronounced. I didn't write it there, so, but Pendlebury or something like that. So this is the example. Someone being driven around the environs of Bloomington, Indiana, retains the text, "This is Monroe County." Unknown to her, she leaves and re-enters Monroe County several times in the course of the drive. So the R proposition, the Russellian proposition, believed changes. But isn't this a case of continued belief? So this is the example. You have an agent, she's in a car, somebody tells her, "This is Monroe County," and then she retains that belief through the whole drive, right? But without knowing that, she keeps getting in and out of Monroe County, okay? Obviously here, in 1980, John is using some different terminologies, talking about text and our propositions, but let us put this example in our terminology now. So you have one single belief episode, right? A self-locating belief episode that we could express as, "This is Monroe County." The referential truth conditions change, so the truth value changes every time she goes in and out of Monroe County, right, of the county limits. But there is no change in the spatial buffer. What changes is the origin of that buffer. She keeps thinking, she keeps believing, she keeps having that notion of this is Monroe County, but the origin of that buffer changes. So the changes in the context of the belief episode affects the truth condition of the belief episode and the truth value. Now, is this a case of continued belief? We think not. Let me say why. I think this is a case where whether or not there is knowledge of, or where the agent is attuned to a relevant this relevant identity is going to be key. So the identity is between the origin of the spatial buffer she forms and maintains while being driving around, and the origin of that notion, Monroe County, yeah, okay? So knowledge of that identity is going to be key. And because she doesn't, she forms the notion based on that origin, Monroe, but then, she keeps the notion, but that identity goes in and out, and she doesn't have knowledge of it. It is a case of non-continued belief. She takes the origin of this notion, the notion of this, to be Monroe, and does it while being driving around, right? That also counts. There's no, we think there's no continued belief, but there's no change of mind either, because she doesn't realize it. She's just unaware of that, of the fact that that identity changes, right? So that's our point. Then we'll have I'll try to compare all of the options at the end, right? So you get like a more general idea. Now, the third and final example, the one we discuss in the paper, is another example by John Perry that he has in that 1980 paper, The Problem of Continued Belief. It's a wonderful example, but it's very complicated, and it's just horrible. I tried to put it as simple as I could to kind of explain it here, but I thought, even I get lost. So it involves a woman, her husband's birthday, and she gets confused about the day, and then she corrects herself, but she's still confused. It's really complicated. So instead, we took the example that Francois just discussed. Actually, we took it, we knew it was Nina, but we took it from his 2017 paper, whose named Cognitive Dynamics, if I'm not wrong. So he already discussed this example, which I think is great, because it's a way of pointing out one of the conclusions. Our proposal here is actually perfectly compatible with some other proposals like this one. So suppose that at time t1, just to refresh our memories, I look at my watch and I think to myself, it's 1 p.m. now. Later at t2, I come to think, actually, it wasn't 1 p.m. Then. I forgot to change my watch after the flight. So our explanation is roughly similar. In this case, we believe, yes, here we have a case of belief revision. So we have a case of change of mind. Like in the other case, if we have two belief episodes, it is 1 p.m. now. It was not 1 p.m. then. I forgot to change my watch. We have two notions, the now notion and the then notion. These notions are linked. So there is continuity, right? They are linked, as Francois already explained. So this, they are one converges into the other. The notion, the buffer you have now, becomes the buffer of then. Still, there is a belief revision. If you think in terms of the belief of the referential truth conditions, the referential truth condition of it is 1 p.m. now would be the truth condition would be this is true if and only if. Let's suppose that the time where Ninan looks at his watch is 12 p.m. So the truth condition, referential truth conditions would be something like the belief episode is true if and only if it is 1 p.m. at 12 p.m. Right? And the referential truth condition of the second one would be it would be true if and only if it was not 1 p.m. at 12 p.m. So the condition is the same. In the one case, he kind of believed that this is true, that it is the case that it's 1 p.m. at 12 p.m. Obviously, he doesn't believe that because that would be irrational. But that's that would be that's why it is false, because at 1 p.m. it is not 12 p.m. In the second one, he gets it right. He says, oh, no. It was not 1 p.m. It was 12 p.m., right? So he corrects himself. So in that sense, he changes his mind. So in that case, we have continuity, two belief episodes, but we do have change of mind. So actually, I wrote this kind of table. I don't know if it clarifies or it complicates things, but it's just to have. So if you have case A and case B, you have Kaplan thinking about tomorrow, yesterday, and thinking about today. Case A is when he remembers his prediction or he remembers the previous day. Case B is where he doesn't remember the predictions or doesn't remember the previous day. So in both cases, we have two belief episodes. The referential truth conditions are the same. He's believing the same thing about the same day. There are two notions, but in the first case, they are linked. In the second case, they are not linked. So that means that when he remembers his predictions, you have continued belief. When he doesn't, you don't have continued belief. In either case, you have change of mind. Now, this is Monroe. We have one belief episode that extends in time. We have different truth conditions, because that would be true if and only if this is Monroe. It changes, the origin changes. You have one notion, this notion, let's call it. So you don't have continued belief, but you don't have change of mind either. And that it was not 1 p.m. then. You have two belief episodes with the same truth conditions, referential truth conditions, sorry. Two notions, but they are linked. Still, there's no continuity of belief. No, I just said there is continuity of belief, right? No, there's no continuity of belief. What you have is change of mind, right? Because you correct the link between the notions and the origin of those notions, yeah. So, some conclusions, yes. First, we've already mentioned that for continued belief, it seems like we need same referential truth conditions and a link, an appropriate link between the notions involved. But it's also, that is not enough. That might be necessary, but it's not sufficient. You also need to have knowledge of or being attuned to the identity of the origin relations between the notions. You have to have access to, you have to have, the self-locating beliefs. Now, one of the things that, let me say, the important, I think for us, the most important point of this talk is not whether we got, Not whether we got it, I think we got it right, whether there is continuity of belief or change of mind, obviously. But the idea is, look, I think we have the theoretical tools needed to point at the relevant similarities and differences between a huge array of cases. So, we have a lot of different possibilities, different kinds of cases. And I think with these tools, we can at least see, at what points they're similar, at what points they're different, and what is the relevance between these similarities and differences. And at the basis, or at the beginning, at the origin of all of this, is the rejection of the so-called doctrine of propositions, the idea that a belief consists in a relation between an agent and a proposition. So a rejection of what Korta and Perry called monopropositionalism, right? Again, I said at the beginning, it's not like we are rejecting dynamic thoughts. A dynamic thought, a content, let's say, a truth condition that remains constant, well, it's a notion-bound truth condition, and it can be one of the hybrid truth conditions that we have available. So, to conclude, so here is a quote by David Lewis in 1979, talking about John Perry's proposal, his early proposal, right? And he says, that is Perry's proposal. And he says, I'm sure it works as well as mine, but it is more complicated. I doubt that the extra complexity buys us anything. Do we need a scheme as elaborate as Perry's? I think not. Well, we think yes, obviously. We agree with Lewis that Perry's proposal is complicated. It actually is much more complicated now than it was in the 70s, right? There we had the difference between the what and the how, the self-locating belief. Now we have an array of truth conditions, episodes, notions, files, so it's gotten more complicated. But one of our claims is, look, that's actually a good thing. A phenomena like cognitive dynamics, or the role of indexicals in thought and language, it is a complex phenomenon. We have a lot of different possibilities and all that. And having subtle and rich distinctions and concepts, what we think we get out of that is the ability to account for all these different examples, to see what is exactly what is different between them, what is similar, and to get to conclusions. Also, it allows us to have a pretty flexible proposal. So it is a proposal that is able to incorporate dynamic thoughts, it incorporates mental files, and different accounts of notions and mental files. And in many ways, we believe it is actually a simpler explanation. If you think about either the Fregean option of thoughts, but mostly about, if you think about the Lewis's proposal, yes, you only have one content, but the price is pretty high. The price in terms of ontology mostly. So you have to accept propositions, center possible worlds, thoughts, and a lot of things. So far in our framework, the ontological commitments that we take are objects, properties, relations, and their mental correlates. So in a certain way, and we think it is an important way, the explanation is pretty simple, right? And we think it is rich and simple. So we have convinced you. We hope we have convinced some of you. Thank you.